when we talk about the BOSCH project, I just wanted to make it very clear that we are not necessarily alluding to Peter Bruegel having anything to do with these paintings, although that Max Friedlander thought that, amongst others, also the Copenhagen painting was by Peter Bruegel the Elder from 1556. But the reason that we still carry that name within the project is that the painting techniques developed by both BRUSCH and Bruegel, the way of using a colored imprimatura, is popping up again and again in these ones. And there BOSCH and Bruegel were actually the innovators of the colored imprimatura that would enable artists to paint on a quicker speed, more paintings, more workshop practice, more workshop output, because the middle tones were already toned down, so left over thinly painted white ground layers wouldn't be in a hard contrast to the rest of the painted area.
So it's like an isolation layer?
It's an isolation layer, and you see it on earlier paintings as well, where it would be a transparent, translucent, non-pigmented imprimatura on top of the ground layer that would be absorbing the oils from the superimposed paint layer, and therefore create a very uneven, patchy, glossy, matte surface. One would put in an imprimatura layer like we see also on some of the early Flemish paintings. And the imprimatura is at the turn of 1500, beginning of the 16th century, slowly beginning to become more pigmented, evolving right down to what we see with Peter Paul Rubens' paintings and many of his contemporaries with the very colored, streaky, stripy imprimaturas. And Van Mander describes it as the premursel. Yeah. And others use also the terminology premursel of this kind of flesh-colored layer that is in between, as it's been described.
No, the question is if these areas follow forms in composition, then it would be dead coloring more, or if it is a overall layer over the entire panel.
I'm talking about an overall layer, insulation layer, imprimatura, and not the local imprimaturas that gives a tonality to a specific area, which you also see. But that is, if it's an isolation layer on the whole surface, that's what I would call, in this case here, the toned imprimatura.
Yeah, I would just call it an isolation layer rather than imprimatura. It's a confusing term for me.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting. We'll have to explain in our publication what we mean by imprimatura, because I think what we mean by imprimatura in this group now has been the ever so slightly toned isolation layer covering the whole plank with its ground layer before painting starts. Premursel is a term that is having so many different meanings and interpretations that the right tonality would be imprimatura.
No, I just want to say that I'm pleased with the diagonal wall that's not original, because when you compare the four compositions, to me it's clear that the Copenhagen is most original, compared most like the original one. But the only thing I couldn't understand was the diagonal wall. That's not in the other ones, and now it appears to be later. So thank you very much.
What do you mean by original? What is original?
There has been a painting, and there are all four copies after lost original.
That's an assumption.
It's an assumption.
Okay.
Yeah, the
but
assumption
I'm
of Bernard is
sure
that
about it.
there is a lost original somewhere that all four are based on.
What is striking is that the color of so many details differ between the four versions, and if the copyist had access to the assumed original painting, then the colors would not vary as much as they do. Right?
Which would indicate that they did not have access to the original, but there could be a print or a drawing, which then is the original in that case, I guess.
Yeah.
Because the shape of the figures are pretty close, but there are certain elements that have changed, and if you look at the Glasgow painting, you will see that the figure, this figure here on top, has a pig's face. In the Copenhagen painting, it's also a pig's face, but in the Italian painting, it's an old man's face, and in the privately owned, it's also a man's face. So apparently, there are two studios, and one of the, you could say, as your assumption again, that one group of artists misinterpreted this figure, because on the drawing we know that may be also late, but the drawing we have, which is attributed to BOSCH after BRUEGEL, it's a pig's face on that figure. So one of the studios didn't get that detail and continued out of one track without noticing this, or wanting to keep that in a drawing, with 3 naked men bending forwards towards the right, and one having his leg up like this. And the funny thing is that in this one, there are not 3, but 5 buttons all the way around. The same here, you have 3, but they're also all the way around. But in the Glasgow painting, there they are much closer to that drawing.
Erwin Pacorni wrote about it and he thinks it's very late, around 1600. And I think Glasgow is also the latest of the 4.
This already presented as a so-called after-BOSCH drawing, so
Yeah.
he didn't date it so late, he thought it was from 1520 or something like that.
I wanted to add that the privately owned painting is not hanging here on this wall, but it is, as you saw on the slides here, it's very brilliant in color, very, very bright, where the Tallinn and Copenhagen paintings follow each other in color schemes very much as well. But the Glasgow painting have entirely different colors on the jackets. But it's striking that this one is so much different. And there's an extensive use of lead tin yellow in this painting, all kind of ornamentation here, so it's given that extra quality compared to these more common, we could say. And then it's been underlined very heavily here with a huge signature, Euronymous BOSCH. There are 2 types of underdrawing, like in the Italian painting, there's an underdrawing in dry medium, and there's the underdrawing with a quill or with a liquid medium at least. But you also notice that the underdrawing is not always followed by the paint layer. So as if the paint layer has slipped to one side compared to, look at the little man here in his basket, it's underdrawn a couple of millimeters to the left but painted to the right. And that happens again and again in various places, that it's as if it's a projection that has been moving while painting. Which of course is not the case. The painting was seen and commented on by Max Friedlander already in the 20s, and nobody in the 20s would make an old master copy using extensive underdrawing that could not be detected at that time because you didn't have infrared equipment, so why why bother, but just paint directly. So just for the sake of clarity, that could not be the case. And also such an odd composition, that would not be something somebody would sing out to want to copy to get something into the market at that particular time, at the very early of the 20th century. But it has all the interesting details, this kind of structure here with the sun. Well, we don't see that sun, it looks like a heart, but the structure of these kind of ornamental stuff hanging there is in the underdrawing of the Copenhagen painting as well. But we think that we should look more to other artists of the mid-16th century, Van Dijn or Verbeek or whatever. We photograph each single detail in all the painting and want to make picture galleries for ourselves first, and we hope that this could be an exciting game also for the public in a multimedia presentation when the show opens here, and we can really make games and ask people to try to investigate with us and find out how did we try to group these things, and maybe there's a bright person coming along that can help us all to group in a different way.